recording it.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you look at this rubric, notice like it even talks about right in the beginning, the chapter should meet with the college president or appropriate administrator, determine the college project. And notice it's all about the college, or the administrator. It's 5 questions long. And in many ways, working in a college project is much easier than honors in action. The actual word count is about the same. The word count is 1,600 words. Now for honors in action, it's, oh crap, 2,400? I totally forgot. We'll get to that though. But when you actually take into account the research portion and the APA style, doing the APA style annotations and the abbreviations for the research, it actually cuts down your actual working word count to around 1,700 for honors in action. So effectively describing the projects is about the same size, but there's far less questions in here, and it gives you a lot more leeway. So, question number 1 is basically, as it describes almost like an abstract, the planning process, who was involved in determining the project and who your chapter collaborated with to carry out the project, chapter members developing leadership, knowledge, skills, and describing how the chapter collaborated and communicated with others before and after the project. I'll be right back. So only when you get to question 5 does it say quantitative and qualitative outcomes of your project, including the lessons learned by your chapter members and others. And if you go through the actual grading criteria, what this is truly designed to do is focus on developing that relationship with your college administrators. So, I mean, I didn't see the write-up itself, but I did see portions of it. I saw an award-winning write-up that was about at first it was, the project actually changed 4 times because the college president actually changed 4 times in a single year. But I saw a write-up that was about installing, this is several years ago before they were common, the water fountains that had motion sensors. And all it mostly entailed from the chapter's role was working with facilities to find the best places to place them. And so, the chapter basically surveyed students about where, or looked around to see where students mostly gathered, outside of like a student union or outside of where the food is. That's it. But it all entailed working around with the administrators and different personnel at the college. So your college project doesn't have to be this mind-bending, huge project. You can have an amazing project, but if you're not working with your college administrators, that's probably about 60-ish%, maybe 70% of the write-up. For college project, I'm trying to think of what else. Does anyone have any questions so far?
So if I understand correctly, basically the college project, it's a project that come to benefit the college as well as our chapter in solving or promoting any problem or something that's needed for the college, right?
Yes, except the irony is it may not actually benefit your chapter at all, but it needs to benefit the college.
No, I mean benefit the chapter as far as us doing it, not as far benefit us directly.
Yes, exactly. And so you want to, whatever project you end up designing or working with the administration to design, I guess a better way to put it, you should it should be something that satisfies a need at the college or at your campus. Because it can be very campus specific. But in working with and developing those relationships with the administrators. From Phi Theta Kappa HQ's mindset, the more embedded your chapter is with the administrators, the more the administrators will care about your chapter in Phi Theta Kappa as a whole, and meaning like it may mean providing you funding, that may mean getting administrators to come travel to Phi Theta Kappa events, and so it's kind of it's definitely a mutually beneficial relationship between Phi Theta Kappa headquarters, the chapter, and the administrators of your campus.
And must it be connected to any specific area, or it could be socially and like connected to the environment or anything like that, as far as the administration is satisfied with it? Like, can we do it on any subject connected to the college, or does it need to be specified to social life or anything like that?
Nope, it can be whatever the college needs. Now, sometimes you'll get administrators who will just go, "Oh, you just come up with a project and let us know." Really not what you need to hear, as a chapter, because the administrators are supposed to be involved with the process. Now, you can't help that if something like that does occur. And so, in that case, you can, if you find a need, then you can approach. What I would probably do is during your meeting, I would come up with before your meeting, I would come up with 2 or 3 like really solid ideas for what you would want to accomplish. And then if your administrators say that and they don't have any idea of what they want you to do, then you could say, well, we've come up with a couple ideas. Here they are, and kind of spitball with them and see where that goes, because that may do a couple things. They may just go, oh yeah, that's perfect. We can run with that, and here's who to talk to, and so on. Or they may go, well, none of those really work for us, but that may help trigger an idea for them, since some of them may not be used to this, right? They may not have had experience doing this in the past, working with the chapters to develop these projects. It's basically for your campus, because you are going to be, now when you write it up though, of course, your campus is an extension of the college, especially at, like, say, Valencia, where your campuses are basically small colleges in and of themselves. So I mean, like, Valencia West has about 25% more students than Polk State College does as a whole. And that's just your one campus. So, it's going to probably end up being campus specific. But of course, that's going to benefit the college, simply because the campus is an extension of the college.
So the 2 to 3 ideas that you said to come to the meeting with, would you say to write them down and plan them like to the end of it, or just come with the idea and just develop it with the administration?
I would probably say come with the ideas and develop it with the administration. And depending on how your administrators like to work, like I know how Polks like to work. So when we do our meetings with our administrators, we typically have in the past, like, developed a PowerPoint presentation so we can show them what we're going to do or what we've got planned. Now, our projects last year and this year don't really require that because they're not as physical. We can't do large scale physical projects because of COVID. And my chapter has in the past typically done a lot of environmental based projects, especially for college project. A lot of that is mostly because I'm a biology professor, and I tend to recruit a lot out of my classes, so I tend to have a lot of biology majors among my chapter members, especially among the leadership team. Now, if your college were to say something like, still gonna go, well, you guys kind of pick, one thing to keep in mind for both College Project and Honors in Action, your chapter members, especially, and especially your leadership team, they need to be interested in it. If it's a project you have no passion for whatsoever, you're just doing it to tick mark boxes and complete the project. That typically doesn't bode well for success. If you don't care about whether the project works or not, you're not going to care, especially when it comes time to write up, to do write up. So, if you have an option, or if your administration leaves it very open-ended, it gives you some room to play, right? It gives you some ability to make the project maybe a little more personal for you.
Okay, another quick question.
Shoot.
With all COVID and everything, would you say that it will be a smarter thing to do to plan something that can be changed if there is another restriction and the college is not opening with everything that's going on and it's crazy right now? But would you say that it will be better to think about ideas that we can do online as well and not only face to face?
Yes, absolutely. Some of the projects we had in mind last year for both College Project and Honors in Action, when we didn't start banding about ideas, really, we started doing it early. So obviously those projects all got changed. And so I would definitely think about trying to do something that can be done predominantly online. I know the colleges are probably not going to go back to lockdown mode. I mean, there was an article in the Orlando Sentinel today about why aren't we doing this? Well, state colleges and universities, colleges are have a little more leeway, but state universities are legally not allowed to require masks, require vaccines, nothing. And I don't know if you've seen the data from today. Florida, 3 days ago, they said Florida would, if it was its own country, would have ranked 4th in the world in infection rate. That was 3 days ago. Today, they said something like 12 to 19-year-olds were testing positive at a rate of 25%. 2 to 11 or 2 to 12 at almost 21. So you may not go back to an online environment, but you also you may face some resistance to doing face-to-face from the student body too. They may not want to be exposed to that. So can I give an example of an online college project prompt? Well, kids, should we just say what we did last year for college project?
Yeah.
Go ahead, since you were the architect in the end. I'm gonna get water while you describe that. I'm still enlisting, by the way.
We did a COVID-19 flyer with resources, along with a COVID-19 kind of help page that we did through our Canvas portal. So that had all the same resources that were on the flyer. So that was kind of our college project and HIA project combined. But our college project really kind of took off with that. It really helped the student body find those resources that they needed to deal with COVID. We had sources for rent, for mental health, a lot of different ones on there. I'm blanking on a few of them. Mental health, housing. Jesus.
That's fine. So yeah,
Yeah.
they wasn't part of necessarily the Honors and Action Project. They were separate projects.
Yeah, there were separate projects, but
So the college project involved making a COVID-19, because remember, when they started planning, when the new leadership team came in, which I do, my new officers take office May 1st. And so COVID had just hit. I mean, it had only been on for about 6 weeks. And you started to see in our projects had morphed throughout the summer. They had like 4 or 5 other ideas that were much more face-to-face intensive, which we wouldn't be allowed to do. And so we also started getting stories, of course, of people who had been unemployed for a long time and would be for quite some time due to COVID. So they developed a COVID-19 help page and focused it on about 11 or 12 major areas that people could need help in. So, because it started with just food, like, okay, well, what about kids who need food? They're dependent on K through 12 system for food. And then it kind of morphed from there of, well, they need medicine, they need help with rent since they don't have jobs right now, they need all this stuff. So they ended up finding, I think it was over 150 different resources in the Polk County area. And we limited ourselves to just a Polk County, whether that was not-for-profits, state or federal help, and basically accumulated all of it and put it into a singular place. So that way, any Polk State College students, obviously you could only access Canvas, you had to be a student, but they had families. Many of our students, to give you also an idea of why this project mattered more to Polk State, your average age demographic at, say, Valencia is much, much younger than ours. Polk State College as a whole, average age is 27, 75% are part-time, 66%, I think, are female. So when you put that together, when an average population that's 27 years old, female, and going to school part-time, what ends up tending to happen in Polk County is couples get married young, if they don't get married, and they have children very young. So typically, people that come to Polk, on the average, are coming to Polk once their kids have gone into at least kindergarten, and then that way they can attend classes part-time to get their education. So knowing that, it also means that a lot of our student population would be part of that population who directly needs help, because a lot of them are going to be married or have lost their jobs due to COVID. So the COVID-19 help page became a really important part of that. And then, as we said, we also developed, Mel actually developed a 32-page PDF, interactive PDF flyer that also had all those resources in it with active links that could be emailed. So that way, should those students who have family members who can't log into Canvas, they could have access to that flyer, download it, and email it to their family members. If it sounds like a lot of work, it was. Because they had to find every one of those resources. And they also wrote summary pages for each one. So we had, over 150 different Word documents with the logos of each company, whether it was federal government, state, not-for-profit, NGO, whatever. And they had to accumulate all of that stuff and edit it, make sure it's accurate, and so on. So that, but when you think about it, that project it met a very big need for our college. It also did not require them to leave the house. Everything that they did could be done from computers. I gave them all access to Canvas as instructors, so that they could create meetings on their own through Canvas, or they could meet through Zoom. And they did their research together. They did all their any kind of project planning, just the same way we're doing it right now. So, questions before we start moving on? Now, keep in mind, I mean, I've been an advisor for a while. One of the things I've noticed, you could have an amazing project, but in both cases for college project and honors in action, it's where it's in the write-up. If you can't write, and that doesn't mean you can't write, we're all literate, but I mean, like, if you don't know how to answer the questions, if you don't answer the questions that they are asking, it won't matter how great your project does. I've had students who develop great projects, but their write-up sucked, and it wasn't, the good score. It wasn't a good score at all. So I've also seen projects where you look at it and you're like, how the hell did that win an award? But it met all the requirements. They worked with their administration. They had a great write-up. When you think about a 1,600 word write-up, you need to be really succinct. You don't have a lot, and it's in both cases for honors and action as well. You don't have a lot of word count to spare. So before we move to honors and action, any questions? So what is honors and action then? And how is it different than college project? The floor is yours, kids. Well, let's put it this way. Start with this. How many of you have done Research Edge?
I've done it.
So if you haven't, that's where I would start. And that is something, well, I know we have a couple different regional officers in here. That's going to be required, is that they have to complete all 4 of the main EDGE programs. But on top of that, one of the things that I start my leadership team off with every year, they will complete all of the EDGE programs. And the first thing they complete is Research Edge. It's not just about honors and action, but it does a good job at incorporating how to do good research, formal research, with your honors and action project. So, kind of that being said, what is honors and action, and how, going to go back to the other question, and how does that differ from what a college project is?
All I know is that the In Action Honors Project can help you get another star for your chapter.
Yep, that is required to get your 5th star. So technically, honors and action, it is a research-based the way I always kind of describe it, everyone's done a research paper at some point. You've done your research, you've written it up, you've done your citations. Do you actually have to do anything with a research paper? Do you actually know anything about the research paper other than the research you did?
No.
It's not practical. So what an honors and action project is it's basically a practical version of a research project. You have to do research, but you also have to do something about it, whatever you're researching. And one of the biggest mistakes that chapters have is that when they do an honors and action project, they focus it on their campus or at their college. I mean, you can have your college or your campus be a part of it, but it's not the focal point. That's what a college project is for. I read, someone was telling me, I can't remember, it was a chapter in the Florida region. Someone was telling me about one of their project ideas for honors and action, and I was like, but that's a college project. Like it's all centered around your college. If I was a reader, I would go, well, we have an award for that. It's not this one. With Honors in Action, you must have a community partner to work with of some kind. So like our last year's team worked with Polk County School District, as in every student in the district, 102,000 possible impacted people, not including the teachers and faculty and staff. So, we've worked with small not-for-profits. We've with little ones, like we've worked with mental health facilities. We've worked with a lot of different organizations. And a lot of that who you work with will center around what your project ends up being. So how do you decide what to do with Honors in Action? We're here in August, outside of my chapter, because I know you guys are in full planning mode. Has anyone else decided or started to figure out how to plan their Honors in Action project? Okay.
I think that for us, and we spoke about it with Dr. Tulio as well, is that we feel kind of confused because one, they're very similar but very different between college project and Honors in Action. And we feel like there's not like any, like when you do a research project, for example, and for me it's different because I'm in the baseball, I'm working on my bachelor's and not my associate. You get a kind of a paper that it's like letting you know what steps you need to do, what need to be included, like a lineup of everything that you need to do. And I feel like there is some confusion between both of them because both of them need to come out from the chapter. But like the college project is it's kind of simple, of the idea of working with the administration and for the college and everything. But I think that as far as Honors in Action, it's kind of confusing where we're supposed to stand with it and what must be included, what we need to think about, like what ideas we need to develop around it on what scale.
So let me do this if I can find it. Nope, that's not what I want. Where is it? Maybe. Let me get rid of that. So has everyone seen this? The Honors in Action Guidebook.
I've seen it.
Okay. So I have it stuck on like little windows, so I'm trying to see if I can see you guys. So let's see. They have as a download, as a PDF download. You can also find it on ptk.org. Let me go and get us away from this thing. So when you go down here to Honors in Action, and there is a college project one here. When you go to Honors in Action, for some reason my computer is being very slow. The guidebook's right there as a PDF. I can also attach it in here if you'd like. And then they have all of these sort of links that kind of talk to you about what to do. And it has it kind of walks you through step by step. And they have a sample, but they also have not just a sample, they have a, if you go to here to the Civic Scholar, they have past editions going back to 2018. They have, these are generally, and it varies by how many they show each year. I think this past year, oh, thank you. that was 18 projects. And in some years it's like 14, some it's 15. I don't know how they describe their decide the cutoff, but it tells you, it shows you a wide variety of projects that have been done across Phi Theta Kappa. Some of these projects are fairly specific to certain areas or certain regions. Like I've seen a bunch of them like in Appalachia that kind of focus on a wide variety of things, Appalachian towns, Appalachian history, meaning like if you think about Appalachia, it's Kentucky, Tennessee, like West Virginia, that kind of area. But it would give you a good idea of where to begin, like a little snapshot of where to start. And then this guidebook, though, the last in 20, God, what year was it? 2019 was the last face-to-face Honors Institute that we did in San Diego. And they had a catchphrase there. It's in the book. And they would just hold the book up every time. They would be like, audience, where do you find this? It's in the book. So not only do I make my leadership team certainly complete Research Edge to start off their term, but they also have to read this guidebook. Not all the way through necessarily. When you start getting into it, you'll go through the themes. You can see like this theme number 1, the errors of our ways. And one thing that you'll kind of get out of this is that if you read this like 1-page thing on each one, each theme, it's very wide open to interpretation. Now the discover more part, you can ignore that kind of, it's more of a, here's some more things that kind of fall under this umbrella. So don't sweat that right now. But as you go through, come on, Edge, are we having trouble reading? I hate Microsoft products. Wish they wouldn't have taken the Adobe Acrobat Reader away because Edge just does not work as well. So you can see that as you go through, each theme will have its own 1-page description. And when you get to the end of the themes, 7's the last one, you get to the rubric. Now, the rubric will show you, point, and it goes, you can get more specific rubric than this. Once they open up the window for write-ups. So you'll kind of focus in on, like it'll show you 5 points, 4 points, 3 points, 2 points, and 1 point, like what that means, and what kind of detail you'd find. But the rubric will give you an idea of what they're looking for. And it's pretty expansive. It's not easy to fill in all these blanks. Goes a little bit into what is an academic resource, which you'll also cover in Research Edge, a good chunk of that. But then you get to this point here, developing the research question. And that requires, you'll notice that this is just to figure out what's your question gonna be. Like, what are you asking? What do you wanna know? And then if you noticed one of the, I think it was the second one on the Honors in Action page on ptk.org said Honors in Action Journal. And you'll see all of these questions here. And it keeps going. That's a sample project. But basically all these questions, you should be, through your work on Honors in Action, be able to answer all of these questions, including these research questions up here, in depth. And that will become your write-up for the most part. Let's see. For some reason, because I'm in share screen mode, there we go. The research question should be specific to a certain theme we choose to cover. So headquarters has a certain process that they like you to do. So I'll let some of my leadership team talk about the process they underwent before I go into that. About what did you guys start doing when you started planning Honors in Action for this year? just in general, like as a team, what did you guys do?
Well, I mean, first we looked at the different themes and we kind of talked about what themes we were drawn to. And we looked through that guidebook and read everything in the guidebook. Just did a lot of research with that. And then over the next few weeks, we all started to vote on what theme we thought we wanted to do. And then we read the Civic Scholar, and we basically read all of those articles in there to just kind of give us an idea of what we want to do, what's possible for us to do. We talked a lot about our interests, and then we started doing some research about what we think that we want to do.
And it was really important for Marisa and Arialis, who hadn't gone through Research Edge before, to go through Research Edge, and even for Molly and I to kind of go back through it, because Research Edge really covers honors and action. And as Molly said, we kind of developed the idea together. So. We can't hear you, Professor Cornett.
No, I muted myself because you guys were talking. Headquarters, that's the process they want you, they ideally want you to find. In other words, you don't necessarily want to walk in armed with an idea already. You want to kind of develop the idea more organically. So, in Zype High, the way we do that typically is, everyone completes Research Edge so they can get a little background on both formal research and what honors and action is. But then they will read that guidebook, read all the themes, and I usually tell them to pick their top 3. Like, which are the 3 themes that really grabbed them? Which did they find most interesting? And everyone votes, and we see which themes end up winning, the top 3. If there is an overwhelming consensus, in which case this year there was, if there's an overwhelming consensus towards one theme, then hey, you guys, they picked their theme. This is the one that they found most interesting. If there's not, and I've had years where it's not, where there are a bunch of themes sort of tie. And so we have them do further research specifically within those themes. Light, I don't want to say light formal research, where they'll use the databases to really try and figure out in more depth what options are out there, what things can they do. And then they'll come back and vote again, and that usually breaks the deadlock. Now, in this case, they were already very much in agreement as to which theme they liked. So in that case, they start, it's a mixture of spitballing project ideas and who could they possibly work with. So if you haven't read this guidebook, I'm gonna pull it back up real quick. Like, this is definitely where you want to start. But, coming back to what Paz had said about college project and honors and action seeming to be very similar, they are in a sense, they're large scale projects, but, college project does not require any formal research. It's a task you're completing with your chapter in conjunction with the administration. Honors and action requires a good deal of formal research. Formal, peer-reviewed, accurate research. And then on top of that, you work with a community partner. But you also have a lot more leeway. Instead of your college administration coming up to you and saying, like, here's what we want you to do, you have more leeway. So if you have a great project idea, that you are all on board with, that you like, then you can approach a community partner to work with that has a similar ... right? Similar set of values, a similar goal in mind for completing a project. And so the trade-off of having more freedom to develop a project is that it's harder. It's harder to do. It's harder to write up. Any questions so far? My laptop's annoying. I can't see people because the screen's too small. So any questions so far?
Can you provide an example for
Of like
a project?
Sure. So like a couple years ago, like our chapter, God, this is 4 or 5 years ago, worked with developing community gardens. And so we got like a $6,500 grant from a local not-for-profit organization. We worked with a mental health facility. We worked with an elderly community, and we worked with a local homeless shelter. And we developed and we tailored each community garden to each facility. Like the homeless shelter needed a very specific form that they could work with, because we had also had restrictions based on who owns the property, what are the rules within, say, city limits, things like that. And so we tailored the development of all 3 of these gardens to each organization. One was a state-run organization, which with that organization, we drew up blueprints for, including detailed lists of how to actually build that garden, so they could take that blueprint and list. And we had documented the process of building it through photographs, put it all together into basically a document that we could then give to the state, and they could mimic that process anywhere else in any of their other facilities.
So if I understand correctly, the college project idea is to focus on the college life, college perspective, college administration, whereas the honors in action looks more in depth on the community as far as what we can develop, what opportunity we can bring to the table, and how it can benefit them and not the college, right?
Yes, exactly. And like I said, one of the biggest mistakes I've seen chapters do is they'll do an honors and action project, but center it on the college, because it's also more convenient, because you're already at the college, so why not do it there? But the goal is not to do something at the college. That's what a college project's for. So you need to find a community need and work with at least one community partner to help as best as you can solve that need or provide some relief for that need.
Okay.
Now the trade-off too is it's also not just about the project. So if the reason I had the book still open, if you look at the book and when you read the book, when you start walking through, you have 34 points in academic rigor of research. Now, when you get into service and action, you'll notice other stuff, but you have, and when you get to impact, there are mixed in to the grading criteria more points based on research. So out of the 100 points of the project, give or take around 50-ish% of the project is centered around formal quality academic research. Remember, it's a mixture of it's a research project that has an action component. So you can have, again, I've had chapters develop, or my chapter develop amazing projects. The research sucked and they lost a ton of points. Or vice versa. They've had amazing research, but their project blew. So you have to have both components in order to have a successful project. Now your project may be successful, meaning, but like if you're trying to win an award for your project, it's a tall order. So like, for example, like our project, and then if you watch, I don't know how many of you watched, I'm gonna get out of this so I can get back to a full screen. I don't know how many of you watched the Catalyst last year and saw that when they announced, like, say, winners for honors in action, you had winners in your theme. So the top 3 scoring in their theme. And then you had winners for honors in action. So there's 7 themes. The top 3 win their theme. That's 21 winners. There's usually a total of 30. I can't remember if it's 32. Is a weird number. I think it may be at 32 total winners. So that means that there's going to be 11 people that win their theme, or sorry, that don't win their theme, but win an honors in action award. We were one of those. And we had a score of 94.8 out of 100, and we couldn't even get into top 3 in our theme. It was the best score that we've ever had in this chapter. So when you think about competition for awards, I mean, think about that. We only missed 5.2 points out of 100, and we couldn't even win a theme. That's how narrow it is. A couple years ago, Chi Epsilon finished 8th in the world, and we finished 6th in the world. The difference between our 2 chapters, and this is also, they utterly changed the grading criteria for honors in action like 2 years ago. So back then, they had categories that had doubled values, right? So for every point you got in that category, it counted for 2. The difference between our 2 chapters was 2.02 points. So, you think about it, if you'd gotten just 1 point better in one category, or a half a point better in 2 doubled categories, the margin would have been 0.02 points. It's that narrow. So, when we talk about grading and you see those scales and you see those point values, you can't afford to miss any. And so it requires a lot of work. It requires a massive amount of effort to do, especially quality in both projects. And you're even further hindered with COVID kind of running rampant right now. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure. And T, feel free to speak up whenever you want. I'm just rolling along here.
You're doing great.
So the project itself, I understand that we need to research. I understand that we need to build it up around the idea that it will be based on research and not just an idea that we thought about and we want to run with it. But the project itself, like the actual part that we're going and doing things, does it need to be like on one specific time as far as doing a workshop or doing one event of volunteering? Or does it need to be in like a month of a project? Or like, does it have any time essence that we need to look for?
Not necessarily. So, you can complete your project whenever it's convenient for you, your community partner, your chapter, your community partner. Now your final write-ups are usually due in the 3rd week of January.
Okay.
I have highly encouraged headquarters to change things, but they won't because they're stubborn. But like I've told, like if your project is not completed yet, let's say your community partner wants to do the project in February for some reason or another, but that's after the write-up is due. You can write up what you've done, and you can talk about all the plans that you've made, that the date's solidified, and so on, and submit. You'll get dinged. How much depends on the reader that's grading you. But, you know, especially if you justify it and say like, well, our community partner wanted to do it, you know, whoever that may be, right? You know, they wanted to do it at this date and this time. And, you know, we're basically put in a very nice way, especially a very succinct way, because you don't have the word count to spare of, we're kind of, our hands are kind of tied by this. You may not get dinged as hard. And the reason I say that I tried to get headquarters to change it, and it's not fair. So headquarters operates kind of not to circumvent too much. Headquarters operates on an annual year, right? They start on January or a calendar year. They operate on January 1st to December 31st. They have to. They're a not-for-profit organization, and they have taxes to report and things like that. But in an academic organization, if you did elections in December and had your officers and leaders take place in January, what do you you think about it, you're going to lose half of them because they're probably going to graduate at the end of the spring. And then you got to bring new people in. You've got to train them. They may have no vested interest in the project. And it also comes, and headquarters also, write up, if they do the write-up at the end of the year, December comes around, write-up's done. Who do you take to internationals if you win an award? Or you don't know if you're going to win or not, but who do you take? Do you take the new team that's their leaders now, or do you take the team that did all the work and did the write-ups? And so, most of us have our leaders start in, like I have them always start May 1st, they end on April 30th. Now, the trick to that is that my leadership team is always shortchanged by 4 months. By the time we finish training, it's usually the end of May, and it's June 1st, which means they're 5 months short between actually developing their project. So they have to work doubly hard to finish it. But typically you should have, and you can't have nothing done on your project. So meaning like you may have all the research done, but let's say your community partner wants to do like a one-day event, like a really big kickoff event. And they don't want to do that until February. Well, now you have literally nothing done. You did the research, but you have no quantitative outcomes, no qualitative outcomes. So you should have, whatever project you decide to do, you should have 75% completed by the time the write-up is there. If your community partner wants to do a one-off event and it's just a one-time thing, like say one giant workshop or something like that, you would need to have that done before the project write-up is turned in, because you're going to need the data. You're going to need the qualitative and quantitative outcomes and the results, which is about the impact, which is a third of the grading criteria.
So as far as the time and how long this project need to actually be is based on the community choice mostly. Like if they want to do a one-time event, that can be enough for this project. Like it doesn't need to be something that will be every week for 2 months. It
Exactly.
can be a one-time thing as long as that's what they want.
You're right. It's based on the collaboration you have with them, and it can be a week-long thing. It could be a one-day thing, a 2-hour thing. It really just depends on the project. My recommendation there is make it easy on yourself. Don't get overexcited and overcommit yourself and get make it too grand of an event to where, oh, we're going to do a month-long extravaganza. No, don't do that to yourselves. Do it, make it on a good scale, but don't blow it way out of proportion.
Okay.
Yeah, and like I said, when you all start reading that guidebook, especially when you get to the rubric portion, you'll really kind of see what they're looking for. And like I said, about half of it, give or take, it's like 45 to 55 points ish, is based around the research, and that's something you have complete and utter control over. Oh, absolutely, Landon. Thanks for coming. You have complete control over the research portion. So, you can do your research right now, and it's not a small bit of research. I mean, it's you in the write-up, for those of you who've done a write-up on honors in action before, you list your 8 most important sources, but you're going to want more than just, oh, I found 8, I'm done. You, like last year's team, for example, they had at the end of the day, just peer-reviewed research, I think they had 92 sources. They had almost as much as my master's thesis had. Now they didn't use it all. Most of it was, and I don't know, how do you know, Mel, how many sources you have so far that you guys have looked up and read? Like a rough count of how many? You're muted.
I think about 30.
Okay. And that's first round. I mean, that's, if those 30, if those sources work really well, cool. You may be good, but like we had a leadership team meeting today, and Arielis had a really good idea, and so that kind of took that idea and went boop, and we're kind of going down this way, which requires more research. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, it is not uncommon to have 50 or 60 different articles. We organize all of ours in our Google Drive. We have a chapter email, chapter Google Drive. All the leadership team has access to that drive, all the sources. And, when they read it, like some of those sources just may not pan out. And so we don't throw them away. We don't just delete them. We put them in a folder of, well, this one's, here's a source that we didn't use, because that way you can always go back and reference to it if you need it. Now, your project ideas may change as well. Like last year's teams, they had this idea that they really wanted to do. And then that kind of morphed. And then COVID hit, and that got wiped, because that was a lot of hands-on activities, like face-to-face with people. No, it's not going to happen. And then their initial idea was like, okay, cool, great, let's expand that. And then let's expand it some more. So basically their final project was their 5th or 6th iteration of what they were, from what they initially started out as. I should say it's the second project idea and like the 3rd iteration of that idea. And so, you guys, one of the big things is when you're developing projects is don't walk in and go, yep, this is our project. This is what we're doing, period, full stop. You have to have some leniency, because your projects may change. Obviously circumstances, we talked about that before, circumstances may change based around COVID, but your project itself may change. One of the reasons why, not just because of COVID, their other project didn't pan out, beautiful idea, no research to back it up. They spent a month trying to find articles, nothing. And as you saw, 34 points just in the main portion of the research. There's about 10-ish points, 12, 15-ish points in other areas where research will play a role. So if you don't have research to back up your idea may be great. It's not an honors in action project. If you have a large chapter with a lot of participants, maybe you do this as like a side project, a fun project. Our chapter, XiPi, is a very small chapter. We have a tight-knit small group. We don't have a lot of leeway time to take on, major projects that are not honors in action and college project. I think back to, I don't know if Tia's told you stories about what AGO used to be like when we were members, when we would get 40, 50, 60 people attending meetings, and we'd do 2 meetings a day. We'd have 100 to 120 people attending 2 meetings. If we had a major event and we pulled an all hands on deck, I mean, we could easily pull 30 or 40 people. So, like my chapter, that would literally be half the people on my roster. But back then that was probably like a quarter, maybe less. So if you have a really big chapter, you have a great idea, maybe you do that, but that if there's not research to back it up, that's not honors in action.
Another quick question.
Shoot.
We're just talking and my brain is running with you. So can we take like an issue that happens? It could be county, state, something that happened in the US and that we want to help solving or making it better in our community, in the county or something like that. Is that something that we can do as honor in action? For example, like health or nutrition, it's a problem that we all aware of. We can back it with tons of research, but is it like, can we take something like that and do something toward it and call it honors in action or not?
I don't know. I think it would depend on the circumstances. Sorry, go ahead, T.
No, that's okay. The whole trick to that is it has to come from the research. You know, you can't go in with the idea first and then research around, you know, and pull the research around that idea. You've got to show the process of, hey, we checked out the themes. This is a theme that excited us. Here's all this research around this, and from reading these articles, you know, we determined that X would be something really good to help, you know, demonstrate this or demonstrate the research. So if that falls into, hey, doing something for the community, you know, some kind of function, then yeah, it works. But you've got to start with the research first.
Yeah, no, I'm not asking because I'm trying to decide a project. I'm just, for me, when I try to do a research, I need to like think on specific things that I want to research around, because if not, I can sit for weeks and months and just read the whole thing. Like I need this thing that will help me focus around. It could be like, you know, the biggest idea, but it will still help me focus myself to a point where I will not go lost with my research, but I will go and look for specific things. That's why I'm asking.
No, I get you. And the reality, you know, the reality is, you know, even when we research, we kind of have, you know, we're kind of thinking what we hope to have happen. You just want to make sure that you don't get caught in the trap of pulling your research around just that specific, because that's the trap people fall into. Then they just go looking for the research that fits for what their idea is, and that you just don't want to fall into that trap. It's cool to have an idea and a thought, like, you know, but I would say before you land on that is read the themes and see how the themes direct you, and if that, because you got to make sure that it fits the theme too. So maybe start with that and then kind of, you know, and then you can start building from there. If the theme fits for some of your thoughts, then you can start expanding out to the research.
Yeah, it's a weird thing, and it's something that I think most people, when they start doing their work with honors in action, you know, Phi Theta Kappans have all done research projects. You're all smart. You know, it's almost like you have to take the idea of how to develop your research project and turn it on its head. You know, normally if you're in a comp class, humanities, whatever, they're going to be like, hey, you have this research paper. They'll give you your outline. You go, oh, I know what I want to do. I'm going to do this. But with honors in action, it's the other way around. You can't walk in with this preconceived notion of here's what I want to do and make the research fit. If the research doesn't, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. So, you know, this is like, I followed this pathway with ZaiPi for years. And it is, you know, it's almost like a pattern at this point, how we do this as a process. And so, you know, read through the themes, to also to make sure you understand what those themes are. Like I said, life and death, but then, we think life and death, but then there's other things within there that would qualify. Now, one thing about the themes is that they've become much more broad scale than they used to. At one point they had like 12 themes, 10 themes, and then it was like 9, and now it's, and then 8, and now it's down to 7. But by making less themes, it's also widening up what those themes can mean. Whereas back when we did 10, it was much, 12, it was much more specific as to what was in each of those individual themes. But yeah, you don't want to put the cart before the horse. It's okay to have an idea, but you want to find your theme, do a little bit of preliminary work, brainstorm. Once you get within your theme, you've gotten your idea, then you can start doing your hardcore research. So if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
So trying to think if I've missed anything, because I could probably talk about honors in action forever. It's something that I've talked about quite a bit, because I know a couple of you were at Honors Institute. This process it's a pattern that generally, if you can repeat that pattern yearly, you're in good shape. And so, with Tulio, you have a very experienced advisor. Of course, my team, me. If your advisor isn't involved, and of course, you start your sabbatical tomorrow.
Well, end of the week, yeah.
But they're
I
kind of
think
your,
you'd be taking care of them.
yeah. They're going to be your guiding star, right? They're going to be the ones that are going to help keep you in line, because no matter how much research experience you have, the advisors have been through this more. And so, they're there for advice. Like, they're not going to do your project for you, but there's no harm in going, hey, what about this? What about that? With Pi, as I talked about at mini honors, I have about 10 years worth of grading, and every year I would go through it with the next year's team. We would compare and contrast. Why did we get worse in this? Why did we get better in this? What does this essay look like? It's time intensive. Once you have it down as a process, and once you have the biggest part of this is like a continuance of leadership. So having 2 or 3 people shift from the one year to the next. So you do not want to have a 100% brand new team, because then you have no one who has experience. Like last year's team, unless they're super motivated, it's going to be very difficult. My last year team was very motivated. Our 2 most experienced people bailed on us, including our chapter president at the time on last year's team, bailed on my team in the summer after only about 3 months. And so that team was very motivated, but then they brought in Molly Grace and Mel in January, during write-up season, and to finish out stuff on the project. So then that way we had 2 members who gained a lot of experience working on that project. The girl who took over for our chapter president, who bailed on our chapter, Tori had been involved with the write-ups on the team the previous year before that. So she also, as a member, had experience working on the write-ups, doing some of the research, and kind of finishing out the project, participating in the project. So, basically you guys as chapter leaders you're going to want to plan for next year's team. You're going to want to get your members who are involved. You're going to want them to participate with you. You're going to develop them. And that's something we've done at XiPi for 10 years. And it took us 5 years to win our first real award. And I had been an advisor at Alpha Phi Zeta at Osceola campus for 3 years before that, 3.5 years before that. So I had been an advisor for 8.5, almost 9 years before I led a chapter that actually had won an international award. We had won some international awards. We had won like, member and officer and advisor and stuff, but not the big ones, not college project, not honors in action. It took almost 9 years of following the same process. So, and you can get dud years. I mean, my chapters heard me refer to it as the dark year. Not last year's team, but the year before that, they just weren't motivated. They did good projects. The write-ups weren't great. Yep. See you, Amanda. I'm about to wrap up because I got food sitting here. But they didn't get their shit together, and it took that bad year to really motivate the next year's team. If you just kind of go humdrum through, you're either happy humdrum and you're like, okay, this is just the way it is, or like before that, we had been winning awards and winning awards and winning awards. And I think that year's team I had 5 veterans from the year before, and the year before we had finished in 7th place in the world. I think they got very cocky and they dropped the ball, and we dropped out of the top 100. We went from 7th in the world to out of the top 100. And that's with a team of 5 of the 8 leaders on that team having a year. I think 2 of them had 2 years experience with me. And that's why every year I tell my teams, don't get cocky, enjoy the ride. I won't get, if you do a really good job and you have great projects, that's all that matters. But that year's team half-assed it and got cocky, and they got what they deserved. So, I laughed at them afterwards. It was at regionals. They knew they were hosed at regionals, and I just told them, I'm like, this is the effort you put in. That's the effort you get out. So, and it does require a lot of work. It really does. So, questions before we wrap up?
I have a question. I know you're surprised. Is there any chance that you can go over with us on the themes that's written in the guidebook and just explain it in your own words? Because I read it and it's very, very broad.
Like all 7 of them?
Yeah, or at least some, like, just for me to understand the concept of how to look at it and how to understand what they actually want from me.
Well, what I would suggest we do is for something like that, T said you're out of the country until next week.
Yes, hopefully.
Well,
We'll let you back in, right?
yeah, you got to come back here.
They actually head up and they put the highest risk on Israel right now, the US government. Back home visiting my family. So 2 hours ago, they put the highest risk on Israel. So I really hope that they would not put any restriction on entering the country, but it can be very complicated.
Israel's the highest risk. What is Florida? We're a disaster zone.
Yeah, but here they're more dramatic.
So what I would suggest is have your team as a whole read the guidebook, and I would have your team as a whole complete Research Edge. That way we can meet with your whole team And we'll schedule a meeting, and I'll attend a meeting with your team where you guys are discussing the themes. After everyone in your team has read the guidebook and completed Research Edge, and then I can kind of talk you through, the themes and stuff like that.
Okay, no problem.
That way we can just do it with your whole team.
Yeah.
Because that's a long conversation with those themes and stuff like that. So probably more time than we have,
Okay,
tonight.
no problem.
Any other questions? So it's been an hour and a half, but trust me, that's a nutshell for what College Project and Honors in Action is. It's basically, there's a reason that these are the key 2 projects that Phi Theta Kappa values. And so it's a lot of work and it's a lot of effort. But like I said, when your team is ready to roll, just send me a Zoom link and I'll come to your meeting and we'll chit chat and we'll talk it through.
Great, thank you so much.
So, any other questions? No. All right. Well, thanks for coming, everyone.
But before you hit us off, West Campus, give me about 10 minutes after we get done to meet you in the other link that I sent you, because I'm gonna get out of the office and go down to my car. So just give me enough time to get down there. But I don't think I put a waiting room on, so you guys should be able to get in started.
Did you say you were do you want to use this Zoom room?
No, I've got another link set up for that.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. I'll do this.